This is the Barroom Network, and the following program is suitable for all audiences.
Guys, it's Peggy Kaczynski. I retired early from my 20-something career as a sportscaster, covering the Bulls, the Bears, the Blackhawks, the Cubs, the White Sox, and really every other college and high school team in Chicago. So what do you do after that? Well, you start a podcast. That's what I did with my teenage son, Jason. And the result is The Sportscaster and Her Son. Yes, I'm the baby boomer, a mom. We don't get along. We don't have a lot in common, but we both share a love for sports. And we always have great sports conversation. Even better, our guests in the interviews. So come check us out. We're on Podbean and the Barroom Network, or really wherever you get your audio. The Sportscaster and Her Son podcast. See you there.
Hey, this is David Kaplan from the Cap J Hood Show on ESPN 1000 and NBC Sports Chicago. Now get ready to listen and watch to Bulls 101 with Kris and Larro. Take that, Sparkles.
What's up, Bulls fans? Larro and I are back. Another edition of Bulls 101. We just finished a game against the Miami Heat. Larro, how you feeling?
Feeling good, man. Happy to be back on the show once again with you, my guy. Just ready to talk some Bulls basketball as usual. You know, same old.
We do kind of feel like we're in the same old routine now. Towards the end of the season here, the Bulls dragging on. It's getting a little tougher, the schedule here, and we're trying to hang on to this 10th spot. There's been a lot of ups and downs. So this is probably the furthest I've been invested in the Bulls in a season in the last few years.
Yeah.
But no one I'd rather talk to you about it than you. And we've got a special guest today, our friend Evan Zaucha. He is a writer for Premium Hoops. He's one of our good friends. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Bulls 101. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's exciting to be here. I think this is like my first live show experience. Usually I'm, in the recorded audio medium or writing. So cool to be here. Thank you guys again for having me.
No doubt, man. No doubt. My question for you, though, before we even get into anything, is like, what did it take? How did you know that, like, for someone like myself, like, nothing came easy, right? Like, especially math, chemistry, biology, any of that stuff. When did you know that, like, that is your thing? Like, when did it, like, come to you, like, you know what? This is me.
I don't know. That's a good question. I feel like everybody feels like they have like a eureka moment where they decide what they want to do. And honestly, I don't really know what I want to do yet, which I guess is a little bit weird to say. But I don't know. I just like went through high school. I really liked kind of the sciences. Those were all my favorite classes. And when it came time to go to school, I went to the University of Illinois, picked my major as soon as I could. I think I actually applied into my major, but anyways, I honestly didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I went into college thinking I was going to be a doctor, and decided I didn't want to work in a hospital or anything like that. And so started doing some academic lab research at the Beckman Institute, worked in a really cool neuroscience lab, and kind of wanted to make that my major. So created my own kind of degree for that. And I don't know, graduated, tried to find a job, found a job, and life's been good for the most part.
I'm with you. I went into college. I think I switched my major 5 or 6 times while I was in college. And I liked learning. I always liked learning, but it was tough for me to pick a direction. So I get it. But Evan, you mentioned this is your first time on camera, so we really just want to bring you out of your comfort zone a little bit tonight, and let everyone see your beautiful face and let you. I know it's a shock to a lot of people that you are not in fact a character from Seinfeld.
Yeah, people don't know that about me. I'm actually not a pudgy, balding Brooklyn man named George Costanza, and I'm not an architect, and I'm not a marine biologist.
Are you? And your name's not Art Vandelay at any point in time? Never
Nope.
been Art Vandelay.
Nope.
Okay.
But I would, I think that's if I was going to use a fake name to check into places, for privacy's sake, I think that's what I'd use.
It's amazing. Well, there was another one I heard. What was it? It was like Mitt Romney's like pseudo Twitter account. What I can't remember. It was like Pierre something. I don't know. I can't remember, but anyways, it was really, really good. Pierre Delecto, that's what it was.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's fantastic. Yeah, Art Vandelay. There's, I should have come up with a better pseudo name than just using my own name. So, but here we are in the non catfishing community as Bulls podcasters. So we wanted to kind of get in and review this week's Bulls games. We had kind of an up and down week. We had a really nice win against the Boston Celtics earlier in the week, followed by a horrible loss to the Cavs, which we didn't look like we belonged in the 10th spot. And then we had a nice win against the Hornets, which came out strong, played in a really nice game. And then tonight against Miami, got down big early, made a pretty decent comeback towards the end, and then a really excellent 30-foot shot from Denzel with about 50 seconds left kind of sealed the fate. Larro, I know Larro's hurting on that shot. Hurting. I know the fan base. I think C Red Fred just had to log off Twitter for the rest of the night.
Oh, no.
Here it is. That hurts.
And I thought the first 20 times on the broadcast were painful enough, but I think this one hurts the most. Oh,
no.
Oh,
yeah. So Evan, I wanted to see just how are you feeling about the Bulls at this point in the season with all the things that they've done, the moves that they made with Zach being out? Like, what are your hopes for the rest of the season?
yeah, that's a great question. When we made the trade and acquired Nikola Vucevic for Wendell Carter Jr., 2021 protected first rounder, 2023 protected first rounder, that was a pretty clear signal that the front office wanted to do something serious this year. And I think a lot of people thought that, things were going to come together pretty quickly. Vooch and Levine are a pretty natural pairing in pick and roll, especially. And in the half court offense, Vooch brings kind of a lot of size that I know people complained about Wendell Carter Jr. kind of his post defense and stuff like that. But I think that we're seeing now that, just the couple moves that we made at the deadline aren't enough to turn this roster over completely. And it's going to take time. And Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley said that they're not done yet. And I believe that they're not. There's quite a few shoes left to drop, I think, in the offseason. Namely, it'd be nice to get a primary initiator, but I think Billy Donovan can kind of crowdsource that offensive generation in the half court through creative schematic design and stuff like that in terms of the way he designs his actions and his sets. But I think what we really, really need is point of attack defense. And that's been a recurring theme throughout the year. And even acquiring a new center, even acquiring Troy Brown Jr. hasn't completely fixed that. So that's an area I'd look to fix in the offseason. And there's frankly no way that we're going to cover that, before the end of the year. I think the front office could make moves in terms of cutting Big Kris, as much as we all love him, because they got to pay that money anyways. But they'd have to convince, the owners that it's worth it. So, and they'd have to find a guy in the G League or something like that who's, ready and willing to sign. So far, I've seen some flashes. I've seen some things that excite me, especially on the offensive end. But I've also seen a lot of things that worry me, especially at point of attack. So, I think I'm going to judge this more on what they do in the offseason and how we look, especially in the first half of next year. But it'd still be great to make the play-in game. I would really like to see us back in the playoffs. So mixed results so far, I would say. How do you guys feel about it so far?
I was talking to Kris about this, right? So I'm kind of like stuck in between the middle in a way, because we're like at the point right now where if we somehow just went on this like losing streak, and we would up our chances of getting a top 4 pick, right? And then you kind of get, kind of excited about like, okay, we got Vooch, we got Zach, we got Pat, and then we can get like a top 4 protected pick. That's nice. But the competitor in me is I really want to make the playoffs. Like I want to see the guys in the playoffs. I would like to see Zach in the playoffs. I would like to see this roster in the playoffs. So even more so that the front office can see what they have even more so in terms of, the competitive side of it in a playoff setting. But if you're asking me about the season so far, to me offensively, I'm not really worried because, like you said, a lot of the creation is kind of like crowdsourced, and he does a lot of really good stuff, in terms of like different sets, being able to have Thad and Vooch be the creators, if you will, the facilitators. The problem I have is it's always been defense, and right now they've been kind of overplaying the roller a little bit just because they've been so worried about it. But we've been playing guards that have been able to swing that ball and skip that ball over there to the other side to get pretty good looks from 3, and we've been bit a lot from that. So it's just, it's almost, if you watch the Heat tonight, just the Vincent was just, he was a dog, man. A point of attack dog, and we need that. This team needs a defensive guy like that, and I really like Troy Brown Jr., but we need a pest, a guy that we could just throw on the ball and we could just rotate when we need to, not like forced in a way. So it's that's where I'm at defensively. I think there wings, please. We need to find some wings. We need to get some wings in here. So that's where I'm at right now with this team.
Evan, you said something important. I think before this season, everyone thought point guard is the number 1 need. But with Zach's leap in his playmaking skill this year, bringing Vooch in, and he's a pretty solid playmaker out of the post. Thad has obviously been a revelation there this year as well. So you said by committee, we've done a pretty good job. I think last week I said we were tied for first since the trade on assists per game with like 28.5 per game. We had 28 tonight in the loss again. We're moving the ball pretty well. Billy Donovan's done, I think, a great job offensively of getting the offense moving and generating good looks this year. But the problem is our offense has been pretty efficient, and our shot making has been really, really good, tops in the league. But the point of attack defense to me has been the number 1 need. So when you said that, Evan, I'm like, okay, good. Someone I know who knows basketball better than me is also agreeing with me and saying point of attack defense is the number 1 need. So I think that's, now you may be able to get that in the offseason with a point guard, bringing in that package, someone like, Mike Conley or Kyle Lowry, or even, I know we've talked about Lonzo Ball a lot. He's not necessarily a primary creator, but he is a great perimeter defender, and he's a ball mover. He's an excellent passer. So, we may be able to do that. But I think you've seen the difference since Garrett Temple has been in the starting lineup. And with Troy Brown Jr. added to the team, those 2 guys who are competent perimeter defenders. Now, Troy Brown Jr. off ball still has some issues, but they have improved our point of attack defense significantly, because before it was just Zach and Kobe out there, and then Pat at the 3, who's kind of out of position, and he's a rookie. So, yeah, it's been an up and down year. It's been kind of weird to think that our record is not really different than it was last year, but the way I feel about the team is completely different. I do feel like we are in an upward trajectory, especially with the moves that we made. I feel like this front office is going to be bold and aggressive in getting the people that they want into the building. And I think we've got a competent enough coach, and hopefully some training staff, some, player development staff that we can have the infrastructure in place. I know we were talking about that with Cap a couple weeks, or was it last week? Was it only last week? Has it only been a week?
Yeah.
But, yeah. So I agree with you guys. I mean, I think we're headed in the right direction. It's definitely been a frustrating, grueling season for a lot of reasons. You see the unfinished product, I think, and you see that we've got a ways to go still.
No doubt about that, man. No doubt about that. I kind of wanted to talk about Pat, right? Really quick.
Yeah.
Anybody that knows me knows I'm a huge Pat guy. That's my boy. That's who I wanted. And I'm kind of getting I'm in a point where I don't know if I should be like worried, or is it that he is just really trying to get acclimated to the league, really trying to find his spots. Like Evan, from your point of view, like you're like Kris has said, and anybody that follows you understands, like you're really good at this, breaking down the game and really articulating things really well. So, like, what do you feel about Pat? Like, are you worried at all? Are you his lack of aggressiveness? Is that something that you think is something that he'll fix? Is there any examples that you've seen before like this before that you think gives you some optimism that it's not something that's going to stay around?
So, in my opinion, Pat is ahead of schedule. He came into the draft, this past off season as the second youngest player in the class, after only Alexei Pokusevsky. And Poku spent a lot of time in the G League this year. Mm-hmm. Pat has not only spent the entire season in the NBA, he's started most games. So the fact that he's able and capable so far of handling the workload that we've given him, and the kind of stress that we've put on him, as such a young rookie, especially on the defensive end, we rely on him a lot because, like you guys talked about, like we've all talked about, the point of attack defense is really rough. And frankly, the rim protection is not super ideal either. And so, there's like a lot of places in the half court defense where elite can break in the dam, and, constantly having to plug those holes up and not knowing where the next one is going to pop it's a frustrating developmental context for sure. But Pat has done really well there so far. Definitely not worried about him on the defensive end. Mm-hmm. I think when you talk about his aggressiveness, I think it's okay to be a little concerned about it. When you listen to his interviews so far this season, like especially after he has big games, it's pretty clear that he's trying to take the game in stride and attack when it's clear that it's his moment to do so. He doesn't want to step on anyone's toes. He doesn't want to try to usurp the picking order at all. And I think so far that's good. He's creating within himself. He's doing what he feels comfortable with. And as a rookie, just even getting your feet set, playing starters minutes as a 6'7", 6'8" kind of combo forward is really good. Now, I do think there are areas where Pat should be used in a way that enables his aggressiveness a little bit more. One area, so Kris, you mentioned that you thought Billy Donovan has done a pretty good job so far this season in terms of kind of redesigning the offense in a way that makes more sense. And for the most part, I agree with that. But I do have some kind of minor points of complaint or suggestion that I mentioned on the recent episode of Sense and Scalability we did about the Bulls. And one of them was getting more action where we use guards as screeners. We generally run that delay action with the center holding the ball at the top of the arc. We can flow either left or right into side pick and roll, empty corner pick and roll. We can run an action that gets somebody going downhill, but we're a little bit predictable in who's going to set the screen and what they're going to do based off that screen. Lowry's always going to pop. Thad is generally going to roll. Vooch can do both, but that means we run a lot of that empty corner pick and roll with Zach and Vooch when Zach is healthy, or Kobe and Vooch now that Zach's not. And I think it gets a little bit predictable. I want to say it's probably as a result of Billy, not having a full offseason to implement his scheme, especially as a new coach. And I think Pat is probably the biggest recipient of the negative nature of this kind of, pandemic experience. Because when you come in, you don't have a full off season, even as a rookie, you're just running bare bones stuff. And so he's been opportunistic in the half court, especially since we got Vooch, and especially as a cutter. Yeah. I'd like to see the catch and shoot three kind of level out a little bit. He's been a little bit inconsistent there, but he can get it off anytime he wants. So he's going to keep taking them, and he's definitely willing to take them. The mid-range creation, especially self-creation on the pull-up, is where I have the most faith, because those are the kinds of markers that you see, those kinds of self-creation markers in prospects like Kawhi Leonard, prospects like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. So the sky is the ceiling for Pat, and I think the fact that he's kind of playing within himself it's something to note, but I don't think it's something to worry about a whole lot quite yet for me.
Yeah, I agree. One more point, right? So, so one of the things that I like tonight, right? You said it, the catch and shoot. There was a play tonight where he was swung the ball in the corner and he pump faked and then took off. But he ended up stepping out of bounds because of that, the elongated step. I really would love to see him add that sidestep, the pump fake sidestep to his game. That is crucial because, he's predictable in a way. I think a lot of teams understand if you go out there and kind of look like you're going to contest, he's going to pump fake, rip, and get by you. And that is something that I just want to see him. I need my boy to come back ready with a full arsenal, ready to play some big time ball next year. Because as you can, it shines through that the front office is banking on his progression into being at least a third option. So I'm just ready for that, man. I really am.
Yeah, and he made a pretty big leap from even his lone college season, when over the summer between, his college season and entering the NBA, we saw those infamous pickup runs where he was self-creating off the dribble. And kind of, I'd really like to see Billy Donovan use Pat more as the ball handler in pick and roll, get him involved in these kind of variety of actions, show him all these new experiences so he can take that into account. He can remember those experiences when the time comes where maybe he needs to secondary create on the weak side or something like that. Give him as much as he can handle young. I think he's capable and willing of handling those pick and roll reps. And honestly, this season is kind of fading out in terms of our chances at relevancy. So I think Pat can handle it. One or two more pick and roll opportunities a game, nothing crazy. See how it goes. And I don't expect him to be even a positive player in those moments, but I think we've got some shots that can go around, that can be redistributed. We've got some fluff. Just look at Denzel Valentine tonight. So maybe a little bit more regulation of the touches for the offense, especially. If we value Pat, like I think we value Pat, at least the front office values Pat, then let's show it. Let's develop him to the fullest extent and give him everything that he can handle.
I agree. And it's something when Zach went out for the protocols, I tweeted, we need to run Pat more as a ball handler. We need to force him to be a part of the offense because, when Vooch came in, he was doing a really good job of cutting, making timely cuts and getting to the basket. And as you said, Evan, kind of playing within himself and seeing, reading the game and seeing when his shot was available, when it was coming. But as Larro said, he's very predictable right now in what he's going to do. There was a moment tonight when he got a pass late on the 3-point line in the corner, and I knew, I was like, he's going to pump fake and he's going to step out of bounds as he's trying to. It's exactly what he did. It's exactly what he did. So you want to see him, either just take that shot or do the sidestep or you get more counters. And so I think we'll see it. I'm not worried about him either. I know that there's been, I don't know, the low scoring, I think is a concern for some fans, but what I like about Pat and what has me excited about him is there's nothing that I've seen yet that I don't think he can do well at some point. Like there's nothing I'm seeing going, okay, he's never gonna be able to do this, or he's never gonna be able to do that. He doesn't take anything off the table right now. Now he's not good at everything,
right? But
I think he's got enough talent, enough skill, enough feel to be able to make progress in all of those areas and be competent in all of those areas, which is a rare thing to find from a 19-year-old.
Yeah, and I feel comfortable saying that he's already doing these things in practice runs, in pickup type situations or small sided games. When the Bulls do get a chance to practice, which is obviously infrequent given the coronavirus shortened season, and the way that things are so close together now, especially with travel. But I know he's practicing these things when he's in the gym. But really, and I kind of touch on this in my feel piece, you really need game reps to feel that out, to be able to develop those counters, because you can try your best to replicate a game like situation in the gym, and small sided games with kind of like, unique or restrictive rules can help you develop and make things realistic. But there's just no substitute for the real thing. And so I would really like to see Pat take as many of those kinds of chances as he can in the games, and for Billy to give him more, because that's the only way you're going to pick those counters up. Kyrie Irving didn't figure out how to dribble like an absolute god by, dribbling by himself in a gym. He was dribbling, in games, small sided games, games with his friends and stuff like that. Always on the ball. So the more Pat's on the ball, the better he'll be on the ball. And I think he can handle it. So let's give it to him. Especially with Zach out, like he should be getting. It's been nice to see Kobe get the touches he's getting, and he did a really good job with them tonight. I thought after he got kind of the first quarter jitters out, or that kind of classic Bulls slow start that we've seen the last couple of weeks. But I thought he did a good job. But I think Pat can take some of that too. So I hope we see more of that, as time goes on.
It reminds me, Larro. Was it last week where you were saying, I don't know about this, but I'm gonna praise Kobe for a second. And you were worried like you were gonna get backlash for it.
Yeah,
praise the man, because he's 21.
Yeah,
he's taken on a new role this year.
Yeah.
So I've liked what we've seen from Kobe the last 5 or 6 games. He's had an inconsistent year, but there's things that he can improve on, I think, and take into the summer with him. And there's still time. So get your praise out while you can, Larro.
For me, like Kobe, right? What I look for, right, is Kobe is so fast, like straight line speed. He's so fast. And I think some people, like some fans, when you play basketball one way your whole life, because you're just that much better than everybody, when you get to the league, you think it's, hey, I don't know any other way. This is what I do. And then you get, like I said before, like you get smacked with reality. Like these guys are just as athletic, just as fast, or maybe more. So you have to start getting these counters. You have to start changing your speeds and knowing how to lull guys with a hang dribble, or, just changing your speeds. And I think that an off season with Mo Cheeks, also, he has Chris Paul in his ear. He's talking to Chris Paul, and that's like his, older brother. So these things, I think he'll get better. Now, I don't think he'll ever. I don't want to cap him. He's only 21, but I don't think he'll be a primary guy that you can just, he can just sit there and go off pick and roll, and read and go crazy. But I think Kobe can be good enough to really be like a really good secondary creator. Tonight, that move he made on Bam to get the dunk, like I believe he can do that. That's Bam. That's a great defender. For him to change his speed, hit him with a hesitation, and get by and explode. Like I really think Kobe can do that. And I think something in the beginning of the game when I don't think we've seen any team other than the Heat that really switched everything and had guys that long, that athletic. And it kind of threw him off for a loop in the first quarter, because he's trying to throw over the top, they're tipping it, deflections are going. So I think it took him a while to kind of get really, like you said, the first quarter jitters out of the way to see what they were doing. But again, I mean, I really like what Kobe's doing. He's really taking advantage of his touches. I think he's taking the right shots. I think you could tell that when he's in the pick and roll with Vooch, he's kind of letting the game come to him. He's kind of doing his best with reading the defense and making the right play. For some people, I mean, the turnover stands out and it makes you mad. But you have to look at everything else he does. You have to kind of really watch the game and look what he does for the whole game and really pay attention to it, And, man, I think Kobe deserves a little bit of praise here, man. I think he's doing the best he can right now with, like the lack of practice and things like that, So yeah, shout out Kobe, man.
Awesome. And you know what? His assist to turnover ratio is not as bad as I thought it would be this year. Like you mentioned the turnovers, he does have some pretty brutal turnovers, but overall, I think his playmaking has improved, even if it's not where we want it to be yet. But it is his first year, really, really trying in that role. And there's still time. But Evan mentioned something. He mentioned his article on basketball feel, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on. I know you've probably been on other podcasts and talked about this, but this article is really fantastic because we talk about, as a basketball community, we talk about feel all the time. We always talk about basketball IQ, it's sometimes called, or feel, or you'll hear commentators saying, the game's really slowing down for him. He's reading we use all these different phrases to kind of talk about feel in basketball. But you have this great article, and all those got it shown up here, that kind of breaks down the different elements of basketball feel from a scientific standpoint, from your background in the neurological background. And then PD Webb, who's a great draft guy on Twitter, kind of breaks down into these 8 categories, and feel is obviously one of them. But you've got dribbling, shooting, playmaking, on and off ball defense, role, tools, and then feel as the different kind of things that each player can bring to the table and their relative strengths and weaknesses at those things. And so you do a really, really great job about breaking down feel, and you break it into 3 different categories. I wanted to see if you would be able to help explain each of these categories for us and kind of get a little in depth about what it is. But there's basically, you said there's pattern recognition, visual processing, which you say is like spatial recognition, and then processing speed. So could you go into each of those a little bit and kind of discuss how those go into basketball feel?
Yeah, sure. So the first one is pattern recognition. And I think I listed it first in the article because I think it's the first that comes up in the process when these players are solving problems. And I like to call it solving problems because there are so many different variables and those are constantly changing in ways that make the problem different the more times you see it. So pattern recognition to me is the ability to kind of observe all of those variables, all the other 9 players on the court, where the ball is and kind of where everybody is moving and where they're going to be. Pattern recognition is the ability to kind of process all that information, but more specifically, it's a pattern. And so the idea is that you're recognizing these things since you've seen them before. A classic way that like neural network models are trained when people do kind of data science research with neural network kinds of things, and they're designed to kind of simulate decision making. The way that they're trained is by showing them a data set that is supposed to be representative of what it's supposed to be solving, and it learns from that and encodes that information, and it can reference those almost like templates when it goes to solve later problems. That's what the basketball player is doing in half court. So all these experiences, and this is why I say we need to get Pat Will more on ball reps in the pick and roll, especially because he needs to see all these things, be able to make these into templates so he can refer to them later when the games matter more, when we're real competitors, hopefully. Same with Kobe White. And I think Kobe, you guys both touched on the turnovers. I have no concerns with the turnovers this year because he's trying things. He's trying new things. They don't always work, but I think I was actually a little bit worried when I saw that he and Mo Cheeks have been concerned about the turnovers and trying to cut them down. I hope they're being specific talking about his handle, because I think, the high dribble is something that gets him into trouble, causes some of those turnovers that just don't need to happen. But the passing turnovers are fine for me. So pattern recognition is kind of that awareness part of the problem. Where are all these players? Where's the ball and where are they going? The second one, visual processing, is how you update that heuristic. Your awareness of everybody that's on the court. Visual processing is basically the act of taking all this information in via your eyes, encoding it into stimuli that your brain can action. And so, the example, I guess, a good example would be the pick and roll. So you're running a classic pick. We'll use delay because Chicago runs delay. So, the ball handler brings the ball up. hands off to the big. The big now has the ball at the top of the key. And we're going to run some, empty corner pick and roll. So Zach gets the ball, Vooch cuts to the corner, Vooch sets the screen, and then you can just freeze frame it essentially. The player can use their pattern recognition, their kind of experiences in the past, and reference those to shortcut the problem in the sense that they can impose a solution that they've seen before. And maybe that'll work and maybe it won't. And they probably have some subconscious calculation of probability based off of their past training that can inform this. So that visual processing is updating that constant flow of information so that you're in real time adjusting the odds of probability of which solutions will work and which won't. The last one is visual processing speed, or rather processing speed. And it's both visual processing, so the input of information, you taking all this in, and then also the processing speed of the action or solution that you decide to solve it. So we'll go back to our pick and roll example of empty corner with Zach and Vooch. So the big steps up and steps up to Zach and Vooch in space. Vooch holds the screen in place. But it's clear that they're playing this pretty aggressive. Zach has insane bursts and like all the bag in the world in terms of his handle. So he decides that he's seen this before. He's going to attack this off the dribble, and he's got a pretty good chance at making a layup, pretty easy layup, beating that big off the dribble. That I would say is kind of a good example of the whole loop all the way through. He recognized the pattern by constantly updating what he was seeing. As the problem evolved, as the enemy teams or the opposing team's solution became more apparent to him, and those chess pieces made themselves available, he solved the problem by constantly updating that heuristic. And then once it was time to enact that solution, he enacted it as quickly as he possibly could in terms of the processing speed. And the neuroscience research shows that it's almost like the power of positive thinking. Like if you're thinking about a solution and you can plan that in your mind ahead of time, you will be quicker to enact that solution. And so you can kind of shortcut those processing speed mechanisms in that way too. So I think it's a pretty good example that kind of walks through the entirety of how I break down feel. And I think it portrays itself not only in passing, which is where people classically think of like high field players or high basketball IQ players. Short aside, I hate the stuff about IQ. IQ is not even a relevant like intelligence metric in the year 2021. So feel or, spatial awareness, basketball processing ability, all that stuff is good. I think that walks through it pretty well, but like, I'm happy to break down any subsection of that or talk about how my next kind of investigations are going to be how that affects how dribble is developed. So stay tuned for that. I don't know when it's coming. I have like a textbook to read about it, but it'll be a good time when it does come.
Well, it's such an untapped subject, even though it's essential in basketball, and not just in basketball, but we do this in our everyday lives. We're constantly doing this type of processing and problem solving and pattern recognition in our own lives. I mean, we're driving down the road, we're doing that. In our jobs, we're doing that. I mean, in our relationships, we're doing that. Like we see these patterns develop, we're processing them, and then we're trying to find the most efficient solution. And that's kind of the basis of basketball analytics in general. I feel like is the goal of basketball analytics is to help find the most efficient, offense, most efficient defense. And people always think of analytics as just shoot a lot of threes, but it's not. It's about finding the most efficient and highest probability shot in any given situation. And that when you have players that can process that in real time, players like Chris Paul or LeBron James or Luka Doncic, these guys have really high basketball feel. Or someone new on the scene is LaMelo Ball and his passing ability. You see the way they elevate their games because they are processing these basketball analytics in their minds in real time on the court, which is, it's amazing to see. And so it's really cool to see it broken down that way. And I don't even understand all the words you say sometimes in the article. I had to, kind of go and look it up a little bit, but it's so crazy to think about a sport being broken down into, scientific terms and how that can help us understand more about basketball. So I think it's a really awesome thing. If anyone hasn't read the article, I definitely would encourage you to do so. And if you, as you said, Evan, you got more coming out to kind of build off that. So we're excited about that. I know Larro had some questions for you as well about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, so when I was reading the article, you said that anybody that had like ideas in terms of drills and things like that to bring forth to you and kind of chop it up with them and see what you think about it. I just have like one thing, like for me, I've always been around basketball my whole life, right? Played it, coach it, whole family played it, some college, some whatever. But some of the things that I've seen as like, I train a couple kids on the side as well. And some of the things that I see with certain trainers is it's kind of like give them the ball that's at the top of the key, put a chair there, dribble, get by to the layup, you know, or it's a lot of like stuff that doesn't really put them in game situations. And like what I like to try to do is you know, some decision-making drills, right? So in the simplest form, especially because I train like, you know, kids anywhere from like 13 to 16, sometimes younger. But, you know, just simply you maybe you have a ball handler at the top of the key or the wing, you can mix it up. And you have a just somebody that's standing in the corner or standing at somewhere on the anywhere on the floor, right? And what you want to do is you have a third guy, and I'll be standing behind the ball handler. And I'll either say I'll give them a hand to come to the ball handler or a hand to stay, right? So what I'm doing is I'm trying to get the ball handler to not predict what's going to happen. I want him to react to what's happening. So he may get a lane wide open. He makes a move, gets a lane wide open. Next play, I'll have somebody come up. Boom. He has to he's not used to it now. So now he has to react. Okay, boom. Sometimes he'll still take the layup. Sometimes he'll throw it off the defender. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get his brain to get used to his feel, if you will, to get his feel more in terms of, okay, if the defender's coming up to me, I'm going to make the extra pass. If he stays there, I'm going to attack the basket. Just the simplest form of it, just to get their feel, if you will, to get better, you know? And I think a lot of times when people see the Chris Pauls and the Kyries, because I deal with it all the time with the little kids. Oh, why can't we do the dribble move that Kyrie does? Why can't I do the reverse? You know, and I'm like, Kyrie could do these things that I'm trying to teach you with his eyes closed, right? He's been doing this since he was little. He could do a right-hand pound dribble with his eyes closed. He could do a double cross with his eyes closed. He can make, you know, a wrong-footed left-hand layup on the right side of the floor. He can do all these things, like, but it takes repetition. And my question is for you, like, is that what you feel? Do you think that feel is something that can be developed? Do you think it's something that can be developed in a short amount of time, or do you think it's something that has to be developed from when they were younger? How do you feel about that?
So you hit on a lot of great stuff there, and we can kind of work through it all in answering that question. Really, I do think feel can be developed. I think it's very difficult to promise any real results in terms of developing a player's feel in any short amount of time, just because, like you said, you have to show them game-like situations, and it does take repetition. Kind of what I'm searching for and what a lot of coaches are searching for, especially in the NBA. I talk to coaches and they tell me that their biggest concern is basically that they don't have enough practice time. And they do have to spend some of that time with walkthroughs, you know, doing scouting specific stuff for the matchup at hand, essentially. And so how much of that time is actually getting used for development? A lot of that development time is coming in the summer. And so trainers, just like you, are looking for ways to make the acquisition of this skill, feel, and other skills more efficient. You know, less reps, less time, better gains is what everybody wants. And I think there's no shortcut for hard work, of course, but I do think there are kind of ways to do that. And so I like the example that you gave with the drill that you've instituted. It sounds like it's a really good drill and definitely a really good place to start. If you ever studied neuroscience or psychology, what you'll realize really soon is that there's just like 20 million learning and skill development, like skill acquisition theories, basically how people learn. every psychologist and neuroscientist ever has their own theory, and they're all basically the same thing. For the most part, a lot of them say that you need to start off with basics, and you can implement variables as they pick up the basics and make them almost subconscious. And so you're drilling those reactions, and that's a good start. And then once they pick those up and they're making that read every time, maybe they're even becoming a little bit predictive because they can predict the footwork of the players, the other two players that are involved. And maybe there are tells there. Once they get to that level and it's clear through their performance or their accomplishments in that drill that they've gotten to that level, you can implement new variables. And so maybe they're running pick and roll. They have to tell the big how they want the big to set the screen. And then each time the defenders can throw a new pick and roll coverage at the ball handler. If you're just working through all those different coverages, you don't have time to think about it too much. You're just going to have to react. And yeah, you're going to make mistakes in making those passes or attacking off the dribble, but that's a game-like situation. And so you can use that information, even those failures, to inform future success and to develop. So I talked about small-sided games before. I think that's the best way because it's you're distilling an actual game down to its core parts, maybe 2 or even 3 players. Sometimes it's just one-on-one if you're just working on dribble counters. Small-sided games are very good, but anything that can make things more realistic, like you said, that's the holy grail. That's what people are looking for. And so if you're thinking about drills, or if you work in coaching, or even if you're just like thinking about how we want to develop our players as fans of the Chicago Bulls, think about what the player needs to work on most to unlock their ceiling, what will actualize their skill set in the best way. And then think about how you can simulate realistic game-like situations for that skill, to build that up in a way that gives them a baseline of a lot of different experiences that they can draw on.
So one thing that you mentioned, I was reading another article that you've written over the summer about kind of the 4 core players of the Bulls and something that you wanted them to work on over this coming year. And for Zach, you said his off-ball defense and his playmaking. And those are 2 of the things I think have taken the biggest leap for Zach this year. He was not good at either of them, making kind of basic reads on playmaking and off-ball defense. He was getting back cut a lot, just losing focus on things. But he's taken big strides this year. And so it does give me some confidence that we all know Zach is a really, really hard worker, and maybe it's just repetition because he's now been in the league for 7 years and he's been put in so many of those game situations as the number 1 ball handler for the Chicago Bulls, even though that wasn't maybe his natural position, if you will. That kind of gives me hope with guys like Kobe, right? Kobe was put in a position where everyone says he's not a point guard, but he is being put in live game situations on a night-to-night basis where he's having to be a point guard. And so he's naturally over time going to improve his pattern recognition, his processing, and hopefully, the game will slow down for him and he'll be able to, instead of having to think about it, it's the same as learning a language. I'm more of a language and history type person in general. I did law and everything. So in language, when I first had to learn Spanish, for example, I had to think in English and translate the words in my head into Spanish and say them. And eventually I got to a point, and it was almost, I didn't even realize it, but when I heard Spanish, I could understand it in Spanish instead of having to translate it in my head or translate it back and forth. And it became second nature. And basketball feel, I imagine, is much the same when you repeat it so much and you practice it so much, it becomes automatic. It becomes subconscious, where you just do it, you just react in real time, and that's when you can really develop these skills. And something you mentioned in the article, I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but you mentioned that the difference in these players is minute. Like, it's very small. Like, they're all such high skill level players. They're all so athletic that these little advantages really make a huge difference in the NBA because of the high competition that everyone is there. It's the same as going into grad school. You were the smartest kid in your high school. All right, then you go to college, and now everyone that you're there with is as smart as you. And so the difference is the little differences can give you a big leap, and it gets, good in grad school. It's the same thing at an even higher level. So when you get to the highest levels of competition in basketball, those little things and working on those things are going to help you, make the most of those differences. And that kind of vaults you into that next tier, as we saw Zach do this year. So is there any player that on the Bulls, besides the two I've mentioned, or maybe if you want to mention Zach or Kobe, where you think that these types of drills or more repetition in certain areas are going to help them, kind of reach their potential?
Yeah, I definitely think this kind of stuff can help any player on the Bulls. So you hit on a couple great things, two specifically great things that I want to mention before I answer that question. And you mentioned that, even if Kobe doesn't play kind of as a primary playmaker down the line, these experiences will help him. And Larry touched on this perfectly earlier too, when he mentioned that, even if these primary reps aren't where Kobe falls when the team is good, perhaps they help him as a secondary creator. And I think being able to put yourself in the position of a primary creator, we've seen how it's helped Zach. I think we're going to see how it helps Kobe too. And so I think that when he has a chance, like especially when Zach is out, Kobe seizes that chance because I think he wants to play on ball. I think that he's pretty good at playing on ball, but he has to work on his handle. He has to work on those passing reads. And those are things that are just going to come with time that are tough to simulate. Handle and I think passing reads are the two toughest things to simulate realistically in a non-game environment. And so I'm glad he's getting the reps. I think it's going to really help. The Zach example is perfect because like even in the Minnesota days, he was playing point guard. Like they literally started him at point guard. Yep. I know we play in a positionless basketball era, but like some nomenclature still does matter. In the paradigm of playing as the starting point guard in those rosters, like I think Zach struggled a lot in Minnesota, and I think they realized it and started to move him off ball and play him alongside Ricky Rubio more. But yeah, so I think you're seeing the fruits of that labor finally this year, especially. He's really been able to kind of hit live dribble reads better than he ever has before. He hits the weak side corner better than I've ever seen him do. If he attacks baseline, he's able to hit the wraparound pass to the other corner. And those are all efficient looks that buoy the offense, especially because I'm surprised we haven't hit on it yet. But like this roster, this team this year never gets the free throw line. I think we were 30th in free throw rate last I checked. So we're down bad. And Zach is kind of the only one who can create that rim gravity because he's such a great athlete, has a great handle, super fluid, and his stop-start agility is insane. So he really needs to use that. And you've seen when he does utilize the way that he can obviously pull up from anywhere, defenses have to overcommit to the shot and he can get downhill easier. When he's got both of those things working, he either gets downhill and you have to foul him, or he's going to find somebody open if they double. And so a couple years ago, he ticked the foul rate up or the free throw rate up, and it was really encouraging. I think he's kind of taken a step back there, at least in terms of how he avoids contact. But the passing has really taken a huge step up. And so if he can get the free throw rate back up, or we can get some other rim pressure guys on the roster, we're going to look really good. So training Kobe to be that, especially while Zach is out, like this, we got nothing to lose. It's only going to help him in the long run. And so while we don't have a real primary creator on this roster, like let's give him those reps. I don't think Sato is that guy. I love Sato, and I do think that for the most part, he should be starting when everybody's healthy. But he's not really a primary who creates off the dribble unless he's playing for the Czech Republic. Like he's a glue guy, kind of linking type player that will keep the ball moving. He'll take an open three. He'll find the cutter, or he'll cut himself for an easy off ball look, runs in transition, can defend, pretty smart, but not a huge, super great athlete. So if the roster context makes a little more sense, you'll see guys fall into their I guess, ideal role. And the Vooch trade, I think one of the best things it did was get the pecking order right. Like it's very clear that Zach and Vooch are 1A, 1B, and everybody else is at best a 2 or 3. So if we can continue to get that pecking order right, maybe Kobe slides down in terms of his usage, but he can leverage all these experiences that he's picked up when he had a bigger role and more responsibility. And things are just going to look better for him when he does have to solve those tough problems because he's tried this before.
Larro, before you go, I just one point Evan touched on, which is our free throw rate. I believe we just set the record for longest stretch of sub 20 free throws in a game. I think tonight it was either the 12th or the 13th game, and that's the longest streak since the ABA NBA merger. So yes, we are bad at drawing free throws, drawing fouls on this team.
That is tough. That is very much frustrating. Wow. But so I knew you were coming on, and I just wanted to grab a clip, right? So this, to me, in the Cleveland game, kind of showed a little bit of progression in him, because I don't think he makes his read last year, right? So we got a pick and roll with him and with Kobe and Vooch. Jared Allen is playing at the level of the screen here, and Kevin Love is kind of playing in the help position at the top of the key. You got Tice on the left wing. You got Garrett Temple on the left corner. So when Kobe wraps around here, he's got Jarrett there, and he sees Kevin Love. And what I love is right here, Tice takes off. He takes a nice little dive cut there, which brings Darius Garland away from Garrett Temple. And Kobe makes the right read, right? He just makes the right read over here to Garrett Temple, who's wide open because of the dive cut from Daniel Tice. And I just thought, when I saw that play, I was like, that is progression. That's something that I don't think Kobe makes that read last year. I think this is, like you said, him being on ball, him getting these reps. You start to pick up on these things. Well, how do you feel about this play?
So there's a lot to like about this play. First of all, like, notice that the defender who's guarding him in pick and roll is Isaac Okoro.
Mm-hmm.
I started as a draft guy, and that's kind of where I enjoy watching ball the most, because you get to see these guys when they're at their rawest, and then you get to see how they progress as they come into the league and play more games. Okoro is a really, really, really good on ball and off ball defender. He's tenacious, super strong, quick feet, slides well, and he knows angles. So Vooch sets a good screen, and Kobe can kind of peel off of that. Kobe has really good burst, even though the handle is not super great, because he's just fast, like so fast. And what I like is that he gets Okoro in jail, and he knows it. Okoro is on his back, and there's nothing he can do without fouling. So Tice is smart because he sees that Okoro is on his back. He makes that dive cut, and he knows, like, especially with Jared Allen playing that high, Jared Allen usually drops. So the fact that he's playing that high means that, first of all, Cleveland's not going to be used to this read. And second of all, Jared Allen is out of place if Tice makes that dive cut. And just like you said, like, low man has to slide to help. Garland slides down to occupy the cut, and Temple is wide open for three. It's a pretty simple read, but Kobe makes a pretty nice pass. Like, it's in Garrett Temple's shooting pocket for the most part. It's live dribble. It's a strong hand, but like, that's still really good to see. And so it's really encouraging, and that's something you'd like to see him do a couple more times a game. The assist numbers have looked pretty good, but like we've talked about, the turnovers have been a bit of an issue. So if you can cut down on those passing turnovers, especially, and the handle turnovers would be great, but that's going to take some time. He's a promising playmaker. I don't think, like you guys said, I don't know if I see him as a primary per se when this team is good, but let's let him try. Like, he's got all the opportunity in the world to make his case, and he's definitely developed this year in more ways than one. So encouraging all around.
I mean, Kris, I know, if you go on Twitter, Bulls Twitter, you'll see a lot of slander towards Kobe. But the thing is, man,
what up, Mark?
I wasn't gonna say any names. Hey, Mark,
that's our guy. Hey, can you blame him? Like, it's been kind of flashes, and I will say, like, for the Kobe, I'm willing to see both sides of this argument.
Yes.
For any Kobe detractors, they do have a point when, we've seen these flashes from Kobe in the months that the games kind of don't matter a lot. Like, the Celtics didn't have Kemba Walker. Everybody was hurt. Like, I think, God, everybody was hurt basically. Tatum played, but he was off from from the shooting stripe, especially like the shooting line, especially was pretty off. The Hornets didn't have Gordon Hayward, didn't have LaMelo Ball. So it's like the Terry Rozier, Devontae Graham show, which is when the team was bad. That's what it looked like. Although like Miles Bridges and PJ have been pretty good this year.
Yeah.
And then we couldn't even take care of the Cavs. So like the Cavs have been good. The backcourt is pretty fun, but that backcourt is an offensive firepower that knew exactly how to tear apart our point of attack defense. So I'm not worried about Kobe on the offensive end, but the defense has really got to improve. I projected him to be a decently solid bit better defender than he is so far. I know the wingspan is like even with his height, and that's not a huge, super great indicator, but like he always worked hard in college. He definitely needs to bulk up, but like the technique getting around screens is rough. So very clear room for improvement. His exit meeting this year is going to be pretty simple. Keep developing on ball and fix the way you navigate screens, get stronger and figure out the footwork, because that's something that he's going to have to do if he wants to play lead guard. He cannot play next to Zach if he can't defend point of attack. You can't have both of them in the lineup if they can't defend point of attack. So, clear room for improvement. He's got a mandate to get better in the off season, and hopefully, we get that full off season and he has a chance to take a big step up.
Yeah, no doubt. I kind of feel like we should roll that Chris Paul clip just for some viewers that maybe not, maybe they don't they haven't read the piece yet. And they don't know exactly what you mean. I think this clip kind of will help show what you're trying to get at in terms of, processing the floor and what guards or ball handlers are thinking as they're coming off a screen and things like that. So
it's one on a good day. So even though I like to throw lobs, sometimes I can't because the big guy is
right up in your face.
Right in my face. So that's why some of my passes are bounce passes. And so I saw that Brandon Ingram wouldn't, like, he's low. So if I throw the lob, he can get to it.
Right.
But if I bounce it to Nerlens, can't get to it.
That's just so cool. I mean, I think one thing guys talk about when they say the game slows down is you're not looking at your defender. You're not even looking at the two defenders that are closest to you. You're looking at the guy down on the block. You're really seeing the entire five-man defense right there in that moment.
Yeah, because I sort of made a career in the ball screen, and that anytime I got the ball and a guy's guarding me with a ball screen, I'm never thinking about the guy that's guarding me. And Nerlens, so there's no stat for this yet, but there should be a stat at some point for big men who roll out and get other people's shots.
Right. Suck the defense into the lane.
Exactly. And that's something that Nerlens does night in and night out. So does Steve-O. And Nerlens and Steven giving themselves up night in and night out so guys can get their shot. That doesn't go unnoticed.
I think that encapsulates it pretty well. You just watch Chris Paul breaking down the film and what he's doing. And he has such advanced basketball feel. And that's why he's one of the greatest point guards of all time. And it's why he's made the Suns so great this year and why he made the OKC Thunder great. And every other team he's been on, basically. So, Larro, I agree that I think that perfectly encapsulates basketball feel and how the players are talking about feel. So I really want to encourage you guys to go read Evan's piece, follow him at EZ_hoops on Twitter, listen to his podcasts. He's all over the place, as he should be. He's on Sense and Scalability on Premium Hoops podcast pretty often. Down here at the bottom, editor at his own website, easyhoops.co, writer at premiumhoops.org. And just a gentleman and a scholar, as we all know, and a good friend of ours. So thanks so much, Evan, for coming on. And any final words before we let you go?
Yeah. Obviously, Kris mentioned all the stuff that I contribute to, and there's a lot of it. But if you're going to pay attention to anything, like one thing takeaway, the podcast I've been doing with Cody Hodek and Scott Levine, Sense and Scalability, we release once a week on Mondays. Should be out in time for your Monday morning commute. It's a little bit different. We look at basketball in a kind of a nuanced way, and we kind of break things down at the team level. we think a lot about philosophy and the way that rosters are constructed, the way scouting should work, and the way that players are best utilized. And we have a really, really big guest coming on this next Monday episode. Like, it's going to be huge. So, if you're going to check out any episode, I would say it'd be a great time to check us out for the first time this Monday. And once again, like, thank you guys so much for having me on. It's been awesome to be here. Love the pod, love the live show. So long live Bulls 101, baby.
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you, brother.
We honestly, the Larro and I, and when we started this, was one of the inspirations was your guys' podcast and the way you guys break down the game. We think we need more of that, especially on the Bulls. There's a lot of great podcasts out there, but that kind of nuanced angle is something that I think we need more and more of in the sport and in the conversation. So keep doing what you're doing, Evan. Thanks for coming out. And thanks to everybody in the comments, Santiago, Salim, appreciate you guys. JX LaFleur, appreciate all the comments. And we will see you guys next week for Bulls 101. We're out.